I signed the divorce papers and handed them to our maid, not my husband, because she's the one currently carrying his legal heir and my house keys. I'm standing in the nursery I decorated for a baby I'll never have, watching Lydia fold tiny yellow onesies that I paid for with my own inheritance money. She isn't just taking my husband, she's taking the century-old family estate my grandfather left specifically to the next generation. Since my doctor told me my womb is a graveyard, Lydia's decided her pregnancy is a golden ticket to my family's fortune. Julian won't look at me. He stays in the hallway, his shadow stretching across the dark oak hardwood like a permanent stain. He thinks this is a tragedy he can manage with a few legal signatures and a polite apology. He thinks I'm the bitter, infertile wife who will quietly slip away into a small apartment while they raise a child in my ancestral home. But here is the moral trap for anyone watching this. If a man breaks a vow, does he deserve the legacy that came with the woman he betrayed? Or is the innocent child she's carrying more entitled to the bed I sleep in than I am? I'm not leaving. I'm staying in this house until that baby is born, and by the time the umbilical cord is cut, Julian and Lydia will realize that an inheritance isn't just about money. It's about who survives the longest in a house built on secrets. Standing there in that cold kitchen, the silence was louder than her scream when she first told me the news. The morning air in the breakfast nook felt like ice. I watched Lydia pour herself a glass of orange juice, the expensive, organic, pulp-free kind I like. She didn't ask. She just took the crystal glass from the cupboard. My grandmother's crystal. I remember the day she gave it to me. She said, "Cora, a home is only as strong as the truth told inside it." I guess the glass should have shattered years ago. Lydia patted her stomach and smiled. She whispered. I didn't answer. I looked at the kitchen clock, the one with the rusted brass gears that clicks every 4 seconds. Click, click, click. I started thinking about the months leading up to this, the headaches Julian had, the late nights at the office where he didn't answer his phone. I was so worried about him. I had even asked Lydia to make him his favorite tea when he got home late. I was literally serving the woman who was dismantling my life. I remembered a Tuesday 3 months ago. I had come home early from a charity meeting. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I heard laughter coming from the laundry room, a sound so intimate it made my hair on my arms stand up. I ignored it then. I told myself I was being paranoid because of the hormone treatments I was taking. I was injecting myself with needles every night, trying to give Julian the child he wanted while he was already making one downstairs. Julian walked in looking like a ghost in a $1,000 suit. He tried to touch my shoulder, but my voice tightens. Don't. Cora, be reasonable, he started. That was his favorite word, reasonable. It's the word men use when they want you to accept a nightmare without screaming. The inheritance clause is ironclad. My grandfather's will says the estate only stays with us if there is an heir of the bloodline. If we don't have this baby here, in this house, the trust dissolves. We'll be on the street. Is your pride worth our entire future? I looked at the walls, at the portraits of my ancestors. They were all men who valued the line above all else. Julian knew that. He was using my own family's history to gaslight me into staying. So I'm just a ghost now? I'm just the woman who keeps the house clean for your new family? You're the wife of record, Cora, he said, his voice dropping into that cold corporate tone he used for firing people. That is your role. Play it, and you'll always have a roof over your head. Walking down the long, dark hallway to the library, the smell of floor wax felt like a suffocating blanket. Lydia moved her things into the guest suite, but by the 3rd week, her shoes were in the master closet. Her jasmine perfume, sickly sweet and cheap, clung to my silk curtains. She started redecorating. She'd move a painting an inch to the left just to see if I'd notice. She'd leave her pregnancy vitamins on the dining table like a trophy. I spent hours in the library, staring at the family tree etched into the wood of the fireplace mantel. I thought about my father, a man who built an empire on integrity. He would have hated Julian. He would have seen through the polished veneer of the perfect husband to the hollow, greedy core beneath. One evening, I caught them in the garden. They didn't see me. Lydia was sitting on the stone bench my father had built, and Julian was kneeling in front of her, his head pressed against her stomach. He looked more peaceful than I had seen him in years. My first instinct was to scream. My second instinct was to burn the garden down. But a third instinct, cold and sharp as a surgeon's blade, took over. I contacted Elias, the PI. We met in a dingy diner 30 miles away. I didn't want the smell of the house on me when I talked to him. "She's too perfect, Elias," I told him, my voice tightened. "The references, the quiet demeanor, it's a script." Elias nodded. "I've seen this before, Cora. It's called the cuckoo's egg. She finds a nest that's already built and pushes the original occupant out. Give me a week. I'll find the crack in the shell." Over the next few days, Elias sent me files that made my blood run cold. Lydia wasn't just a maid. She had been employed by 3 other families in similar tax brackets over the last 5 years. In every case, there was a miracle pregnancy and a quiet, out-of-court settlement. But Lydia was getting greedy. She didn't want a settlement this time. She wanted the deed. I had to watch her eat my food. I had to watch Julian buy her jewelry, the kind of jewelry he used to buy for me after he'd spent a weekend away for business. I realized that every gift he'd ever given me was just a down payment on my silence. One night around 2 a.m., I heard the floorboards creak outside my door. Julian was sleeping in the guest room now, or so he said. I crept out and saw a sliver of light coming from the kitchen. I stood in the shadows of the dining room, my breath shallow. Lydia was on the phone. She wasn't whispering like a scared pregnant woman. She was laughing. "He's such an easy mark, Mark. He actually thinks he's the father. He's already talking about putting the house in the kid's name. Once the papers are signed, we're golden. Just stay out of sight for another month." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I recorded every word on my phone. I saw her reach into the pantry and pull out a bottle of wine. The expensive vintage Julian said was for the celebration. She took a long swig right from the bottle. So much for the delicate pregnancy. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed until the sun came up. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, terrifying sense of clarity. Have you ever realized that your entire life was a lie? That every "I love you" was just a transaction? It doesn't break you. It turns you into something else. It turns you into a hunter. The next morning at breakfast, I was the perfect wife. I made Julian's favorite eggs. I smiled at Lydia. I even asked her if she wanted to see the family vault where we kept the heirloom documents. I wanted her to see the prize. I wanted her to feel the weight of the gold before I slammed the door shut. Elias called me with the final piece of the puzzle. "Cora, I found a guy. Mark Miller, he's her husband, not his brother. They've been married since 2018. I have the marriage certificate from a small town in Nevada, and I have the medical records. Mark had a procedure last year that makes him, well, let's just say he's the one who's been busy with Lydia." I felt a surge of cold, pure adrenaline. You might think I should have called the police or told Julian right then. But if I told Julian, he would have found a way to spin it. He would have blamed me for hiring her. No, for a man like Julian, the only way to truly destroy him is to let him believe he's won until the very second the floor disappears. I was going to let him announce his triumph to the world, and then I was going to strip him of his name. I spent the next 3 weeks liquidating my assets. I moved my father's bonds into a private account. I talked to a real estate developer who had been trying to buy our land for years to turn it into a historical park. I signed the intent to sell on the condition that the sale wouldn't be public until the night of the gala. I had to live in that house, smelling Lydia's jasmine perfume, hearing them whisper in the hallways about the future. Every time Julian looked at me with pity, I had to keep from laughing. He thought I was a broken woman. He didn't realize I was the one holding the match. The final week before the gala was a masterclass in gaslighting the gaslighters. I started being helpful. I brought Lydia tea every afternoon, tea laced with nothing but a little extra honey. But I made sure she saw me whispering over the cup before I handed it to her. I wanted her to see my lips moving. I wanted her to wonder if I was praying or cursing. "What's in this, Cora?" she asked one day, her eyes darting to the kitchen door as the sunlight hit the steam rising from the porcelain. She was becoming paranoid. The professional was starting to fray at the edges because I was being too kind. The predatory part of her brain knew that a woman in my position shouldn't be smiling. "Just something to help the baby grow, Sarah," I said, using her real name in a whisper. She froze. The cup rattled in her hand, the porcelain clicking against her teeth as she lowered it. "My name is Lydia." "Of course it is," I smiled. My voice tightens. "I must be getting forgetful in my old age. Julian says the hormones from my failed treatments have muddled my brain. But don't worry, Sarah. The truth always comes out in the wash. Stains are funny like that. They hide until you apply enough heat." I watched her face turn pale, a shade of gray that matched the overcast sky outside. From that day on, she stopped eating the food I cooked. She began buying granola bars and hiding them in her room. I'd find the wrappers tucked deep inside the guest room trash can, a sign that her confidence was bleeding out. She started locking her door at night, a heavy, metallic thud that echoed down the hallway at 9 p.m. sharp. Julian noticed, of course. He found me in the hallway one evening, my hands full of old linens. "You're hovering, Cora," he snapped, his eyes hard. "You're making her nervous. She says you're talking to yourself in the kitchen. She says you called her another name." I didn't argue. I let my bottom lip tremble. I let a single, perfect tear roll down my cheek, real tears of rage that he mistook for sorrow. "I'm just trying to be a good aunt to the child, Julian. I'm trying to accept that she can give you what I couldn't. Is it my fault my mind wanders to the girls I grew up with? Sarah was my best friend in 3rd grade. I must have just slipped. Do you see how easy it is? When a man already thinks you're broken by infertility, you can use that brokenness as a cloak. He didn't see a threat. He saw a pathetic woman losing her grip. He patted my arm and told me to go to bed. He actually felt sorry for me. While they slept, the real work began. I spent the nights in the attic, the air thick with cedar and old dust. I was packing my family's real valuables into boxes labeled donation. I was moving my history out of the house piece by piece, right under their noses. I replaced the heavy silver with polished pewter. I took the first editions from the library and swapped them with cheap reprints from a used bookstore. I even rolled up the hand-woven Persian rugs and replaced them with high-end synthetics. The house was becoming a shell, a hollow stage set for the final act, just like our marriage. I would sit on the attic floor, surrounded by the ghosts of my ancestors, and feel a cold, terrifying peace. I wasn't just leaving, I was erasing myself from the crime scene before the fire started. One night, Lydia caught me coming down the attic stairs. She was standing there in one of my silk robes, her hand protective over her stomach. "What are you doing up there at 3 a.m.?" she hissed. I leaned in close, the scent of her jasmine perfume make my stomach turn. Just checking the foundations, Sarah. Termites are a terrible thing. They eat the wood from the inside out until the whole house looks solid, but it's really just dust. One strong wind and it all comes down. I watched past her, leaving her shivering in the drafty hallway. I didn't need to look back to know she was checking the locks again. The night of the Founders Gala arrived. The house was a masterpiece of deception. I had spent $50,000 on flowers alone, lilies and roses that smelled like a funeral, though Julian thought they smelled like victory. Every power player in the state was there. The governor, the Supreme Court justices, the board members of Julian's firm. Julian was in his element, holding a glass of vintage scotch, his hand never leaving Lydia's side. She was wearing a maternity gown made of French lace, draped in my family's heirloom emeralds that I had replaced with high-quality fakes that morning. I waited until the clock struck 10, the moment when the room was at its loudest. I walked to the podium. I didn't need a microphone. My presence alone seemed to suck the air out of the room. "Everyone," I said, my voice clear and cold, "most of you know that my husband and I have had a difficult year. But Julian believes in legacy. He believes that a name is more important than a vow." Julian beamed. He actually thought I was praising him. "So in honor of this new heir, I've invited a special guest." I looked towards the grand entrance. "Please welcome Mark Miller, Lydia's husband of 7 years." Long silence. The double doors opened. Mark walked in looking like a man headed to the gallows. Behind him was Elias holding a stack of forensic reports. Lydia's face went from triumphant to gray in 3 seconds. Her voice tightens. "Who is this, Julian? I've never seen this man." "Really, Sarah? Because Mark has the marriage certificate, and Elias here has the bank records showing Julian's money going directly into Mark's gambling accounts. And most importantly," I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful, "I have the DNA results. Julian, you're not the father. You were never the father. You were just the mark." Julian's glass shattered on the marble. "Cora, you're lying," he gasped, his voice tightens. "This is a stunt. You're trying to ruin me." "You ruined yourself, Julian, the moment you let a stranger in our bed because you thought my body wasn't productive enough for your greed. But here's the best part. I didn't just find the truth. I sold the house." The room erupted. The board members, the judges, the socialites, everyone was watching the golden boy, Julian, crumble into nothing. "I signed the deed over to a preservation society this morning. The trust I told you about? It was a legal fund for the society to fight any claims you might make. By dawn, the locks will be changed. You, Sarah, and your husband can find a motel. I hear there's a nice one by the interstate." Standing on the porch as the guests scrambled to their cars, the air felt like it had been scrubbed clean by a storm. Lydia was screaming at Mark in the driveway. Julian was sitting on the stairs, his head in his hands, realizing that his reputation, his house, and his future had vanished in a single toast. He looked up at me, his eyes red. "You're a monster, Cora," he whispered. "No, Julian," I said, leaning down to his level. "I'm an inheritance, and you just got exactly what you deserved." I walked out the front door, the heavy iron knocker cold beneath my hand for the last time. I got into my car. I had my passport, my father's money, and my dignity. I drove toward the coast. The exhaustion arc was over. I wasn't tired anymore. I was electric. In my rearview mirror, the grand estate grew smaller and smaller until it was just a flickering light in the dark. Julian was gone. The maid was gone. The lies were gone. The best inheritance isn't a building or a bank account. It's the moment you realize that you are the only one who gets to decide what your name is worth. I am Cora, and I am finally, truly free.